Live from WBFF TV in Baltimore, this is breaking news.
You got kids coming to school with weapons, knives, guns. Why is that necessary?
Fox 45 is following breaking news right now. A student and teacher stabbed at Carver Vote Tech. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Megan Gillen. Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell is live at Carver. She is joining us now with the very latest details. Alexa, what are you learning?
Kai, Megan, just 15 minutes ago, we received an update from district officials. They confirm one student was taken into custody and 2 people were injured, another student and a teacher. Investigators tell us that they were both cut with what they call an unidentified weapon or object. Students here told us that one of the students had pulled out a knife. I want to show you some video that we shot when we first arrived here to the scene. There was a heavy police presence. We saw one ambulance leaving the scene. Officials tell us that the teacher was taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Parents were also arriving to the school visibly upset because their child had contacted them and told them about a stabbing at the school. This is what we know according to district leaders. Around 1 p.m. there was an altercation, a fight between students in the school. They wouldn't tell us exactly where, and that a teacher and another student attempted to intervene, and that's when they were both cut with what they're calling an unidentified object. I asked if this was a knife. They were not ready to say that at this point. Now, many parents expressed their frustration not only with the violence that's been happening, but they felt they were not properly notified by the district of what had happened. Take a listen.
Somebody just got stabbed up in the school and they don't think they need to inform the parents that someone got stabbed up. Thank God our kids have cell phones. Like, this is not the first incident that happened up here at this school. I don't feel like this school is safe for my nephew, and I just wish my sister get him transferred. Like, this is ridiculous. You got kids coming to school with weapons, knives, guns. Why is that necessary?
Kai, Megan, as we just heard from that parent, she expressed that she didn't feel the school was safe. You may recall just back in October, 3 teens were shot here outside Carver Vocational High School. And just weeks ago, Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates announced indictments against one of those teens, as well as his parents, saying that they aided in the assault. So all 3 now facing charges. As for this incident, again, we're told one student taken into custody. Officials not yet giving us an age or grade, but one student taken into custody, 2 people injured, a student and a teacher were told non-life-threatening injuries. The district told us they did briefly put the school under lockdown. I'll have more on that. Questions plus more response from parents coming up at 5. For now, reporting live, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Alexa, thank you. We do remember that violent incident. In fact, let's take a look back at that for a moment. It's not the first violent incident at Carver. As Alexa mentioned, in October, 3 teens were hurt in a triple shooting. Earlier this month, Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates indicted one of those juveniles and his parents. Police say the mother and father went to Carver with their son and helped them assault another teen. Well, this was a topic last night at that town hall hosted by Senate President Bill Ferguson about juvenile crime.
But it is hard when you are trying to grasp an immediate situation, such as the shooting at Carver High School, where there was a juvenile who was involved.
When it comes to juvenile crime are not on the same page about what to do next.
With that, I want to hand it over.
From the beginning of a juvenile crime town hall in Baltimore City, the frustrations on full display.
Secretary Schiraldi, I would really love to see your data.
Absolutely.
Because
And this is from 22.
Yeah, and you're going to see the next one in less than a month. I'd like to see some data from you, though. I'm not really hearing too much data from your office.
A fiery exchange between DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi and the Deputy Division Chief for Juveniles in the City State's Attorney's Office, Kate Rosenblatt, highlighting the lack of clear policy on what to do with kids at intake, especially when guns are involved. A woman in the audience telling Schiraldi her teenager was robbed at gunpoint in September in the middle of the afternoon.
Gun cases should come to us when they do. If the police bring a gun case to us, which they can't divert, so they're bringing them to us, we detain them till they see the judge the next day, and the judge makes his or her own decision.
The woman says the suspect was not detained, adding she supports programs and services for young people and their families, but right now, she says the current system is not working.
I'm not opposed to funding for that. I just know that I also know kids that are laughing at the cops when they arrest them.
The state's attorney's office handing out flyers detailing juvenile crime data. In 2023, 625 juvenile cases charged by Baltimore City's top prosecutor's office, including 279 stolen car cases, 142 handgun-related cases, 126 robbery-related cases, but that's not all.
It was noted that there's 189 cases, I guess, waiting to be referred to the District Attorney's Office, State's Attorney's Office.
Secretary Schiraldi appeared blindsided by that data point.
There are 189 cases we know are out there and that may be forwarded to our office at some time.
We just heard about 189 cases which were important enough to put on that piece of paper, but which have never come to my attention from the State's Attorney's Office. So is this just important to say here in front of cameras? Or if we want it to be resolved, is it something that should have been brought to me?
And after the meeting, Secretary Schiraldi, we tried catching up with him to talk about the data debate.
Secretary Schiraldi, why won't you answer questions?
But the secretary and his staffer scurrying out the side door, not taking our questions. Meanwhile, Senate President Bill Ferguson addressing our questions.
I'm frustrated.
Saying DJS isn't working, especially when you have two agencies on completely different pages about the data and what's happening with juvenile offenders.
Where's the reality in this conversation?
It's the right question. It's the question I've been asking for the last year. The challenge is probably everyone's a little bit right and everyone's a little bit wrong. It is absolutely my commitment that people will be around the table to figure this out. We can't continue like this.
The solution remains elusive, with lawmakers pledging to craft policy to address concerns. It's not clear what it will look like come January. Now, Senator Ferguson also says he wants to make sure that DJS is following the appropriate policies, but that's something he says that cannot be done legislatively. Instead, it'll have to come using the budget authority. So we'll have to wait and see if DJS's budget is adjusted to ensure the appropriate policies are followed. We're live in the newsroom. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Fox 45 News spoke with frustrated residents at last night's town hall who say they are tired of the lack of action, especially when it comes to the Department of Juvenile Services and the performance of Vincent Schiraldi.
I think Schiraldi really came out short. He was very indirect, and in some ways he was very self-serving tonight. And really, this is about public safety. It's not about him personally, and I think there's a lot more accountability he needs to answer to. I think Schiraldi's got a lot of gaps in what his data presents.
When it comes to DJS, what do you think is going on with the secretary, and do you think that he understands the problem that is going on?
No, he doesn't, and he doesn't have to understand because it doesn't affect him directly. It's a paycheck to him. If you lived in a neighborhood that these things constantly affected you day in and day out, you'd want change and you'd want it now.
When it comes to hearing from DJS specifically, what do you want to hear from the secretary about what's going on?
His resignation. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but I just don't think he gets it.
Well, that brings us to our question of the day. Do you think that Governor Moore needs to replace Vincent Schiraldi? The poll just opened. You can make your voice heard right now by going to foxbaltimore.com.
If you feel your juvenile crime concerns aren't being heard, you can reach out to your lawmakers. House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are two of the most powerful voices in Annapolis. Their phone numbers and email addresses are listed here on your screen.
Well, Fox 45 News is hosting our own town hall on public safety this week. We invite you to join us. City Councilman Eric Costello and mayoral candidate Sheila Dixon will be on our panel. It is taking place this Wednesday, that is tomorrow, December 20th at 7 p.m. at Leadenhall Baptist Church. We did invite Mayor Brandon Scott to take part in the town hall, but we haven't heard back from him.
Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates continues to talk tough on juvenile crime and the idea of holding young offenders accountable. He is joining some community members today in a crime walk in Southeast Baltimore. The residents say they're concerned about open-air drug dealing and the young people allegedly involved in it. Keith Daniels joins us live right now with more on how Mr. Bates is responding. Keith?
Well, Kai, we're live on Dundalk Avenue near O'Donnell Street, where the group is gathering here at this hour. We're told organizers invited Ivan Bates to participate in this crime walk. He accepted and he is on his way. Now, Bates and other top prosecutors in Maryland see the state's juvenile justice laws as a driving force around juvenile crime, leaving their hands tied, they say. Bates and the others are taking those concerns to Annapolis. They want lawmakers, among other things, to increase probation for kids with guns, and they're asking DJS to notify the court when a young person violates home monitoring. They're also asking lawmakers to classify groups who recruit children to steal cars for them as organized crime units.
I think one of the things you see criminal organizations able to use juveniles and to say, hey, nothing's going to happen to you in the first place, so we're going to direct you to do that type of behavior.
Well, we expect, of course, to hear from Bates more here at the event. We'll bring that to you, the crime walk kicking off within moments. We're live now in Southeast Baltimore. Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
All right, Keith, thank you. Coming up after the break, Fox 45 investigates the Safe Streets program. The latest push for transparency is gaining some traction.
Plus, a new report details internal tension within President Biden's camp as new ads come out attacking his age.
All right, Megan, and just like that, winter was back. You talk about some cold winds out there today out of the northwest, gusting into the 20s, and that wind chill factor plummeting down into the teens and 20s tonight. We'll have a look at the extended forecast when we might warm up. It's coming up.
believe that the commission would like to request that you all take a look at MONSE, specifically the administration of the Safe Streets program.
After months of questions from Fox 45 News about an audit of the city agency overseeing Safe Streets, the probe is one step closer. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost joining us live with the latest push for transparency. Mackenzie.
Yeah, Megan, so the city has an audit commission that's tasked with performing these routine audits of various city agencies throughout the year. And they also have the authority to do certain single audits if requested. And we've been asking this commission if they would do an audit of MONSE, specifically the Safe Streets program, for several weeks now. Some members of this commission have signaled that they are interested in doing so as well. And now that plan is moving one step closer, all which comes, as we know, after several questions have been raised about how your tax dollars are being spent on Safe Streets.
Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, it was presented to us from a couple different parties to include them in the 2024 audit plan.
Right now, where we stand, we're not even at the most basic level of understanding. So even just understanding the chains and the control and the process and the hierarchy, that's not clear right now. And you ask two people, you get three different answers.
So the audit itself isn't actually moving forward just yet. That's really because there's so little known about how MONSE works with the two nonprofits that oversee the implementation of the Safe Streets program at the 10 different locations. Instead, the city auditor is putting together a draft scope of what an audit might look at. And the plan is for the auditor to present that proposal to this audit commission next month for potential approval. And then the next steps for the actual audit of MONSE would move forward. We're live in the newsroom. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Fox 45 News has been investigating the Safe Streets program for years, working to find out how the program operates, along with who hires the ex-convicts who work for the program. Our commitment to you is to gain more clarity on how the city is spending your taxpayer dollars. You can find all of our past reporting right now on our website, foxbaltimore.com. Switching gears now, bad weather might impact your travels this holiday season, and that's what Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is warning.
We may see some bad weather impacting travel around Christmas and New Year's.
Well, these comments come as heavy rains just hammered the East Coast over the last 24 hours. The storms are expected to snarl holiday travel. This also comes almost a year after massive flight cancellations. Remember that? Just before last Christmas, impacting thousands of travelers at that time. Well, Santa Claus also taking to the skies this holiday season. Check this out. Today, Santa's swapping his sleigh and reindeer for a helicopter, and this was to visit the patients at the Johns Hopkins Children's Center. Look at those smiles there. Santa, along with Mrs. Claus, delivering those smiles along with presents to the children there.
When Santa arrives, just the explosion on faces. It's giving me chills just thinking about it. It's so special and just so neat for Santa to get to have this visit with us.
Just seeing him happy and smiling and enjoying himself meant everything. It's priceless.
Beautiful. Organizers tell us this is the most anticipated event of the year. Understandable. Well, taking a live look now over the Inner Harbor here tonight. It's been another cooler day there. Many probably wondering, will it be a white Christmas? We saw some snowflakes in Western Maryland today. Let's bring in meteorologist Wyatt Everhart with that answer. Wyatt, what's the deal?
Megan, good morning. I'm just kidding. Good afternoon.
Yeah, got our days mixed up.
Good morning. You know what? We did actually have some flurries even around Baltimore at one point this midday to early afternoon. So, yeah, very winter-like out there today, primarily due to the blustery conditions. I mean, west-northwest winds 16, yes, steady now, but we were gusting well into the 30s today. Wind chill factors way below these numbers. These are the air temps. Yeah, technically 40 in Baltimore, but not feeling that warm at all thanks to that pronounced wind field that has now turned from really what was west yesterday and more powerful, but also milder. Now we have a northwest component, so even though the wind's not as strong as yesterday, it is a colder wind, no question about that. Take a look at some of the peak wind gusts. 34 Baltimore, 32 in Naptown. We gusted to 29 in Cambridge, where resulting wind chill factors absolutely brutal. You definitely want to be layered up out there, have those additional layers, and have a good shell on that breaks that wind if you have to be out for any length of time. Take a look. Western Maryland feels like 11 degrees out in Oakland, where they got plenty of snow showers yesterday. Cold tonight, my friends. Down through the 20s we'll go. It'll be a bright start tomorrow, and the winds finally diminishing tonight into tomorrow, so that's nice. Winds relenting. And then we stay clear and dry. Actually trend milder for Christmas. Sorry, Megan, I know you mentioned the white Christmas hopes and possibilities and dreams. It's probably not going to be this year, at least not in Maryland. But hey, every year is unique, and it's a cold, windy one right now. Certainly it would be cold enough to support snow tonight if we had any, but we have nothing. It is a clear and dry weather scenario, and there's just no precipitation really in the outlook until we get towards Christmas or even the day after Christmas. Is a temperature forecast and a cold temperature forecast at that tonight down in the 20s. Tomorrow we'll get probably into the mid and upper 40s at least. After that, we've got a little bit of a cold shot reinforcing things Friday. Then the milder trend actually shows up just in time for Christmas Eve and into Christmas Day. Overall, good news here, at least for local Christmas travelers. Things are looking pretty quiet on the Christmas front. Back to you.
All right, Wyatt, thank you. Still ahead tonight, the Orioles will remain in Charm City for the next 30 years. We're going to speak to a taxpayer watchdog on what this means for you.
Frustration about the president's age coming from his own staff. I'm Atrell Nashar with the details of a new report coming up.
A new report by Axios details frustration within the Biden administration about how the president views his age. Polls have shown that voters are concerned about his age as well. National correspondent Atra Al-Nashar reports on how this is factoring into that 2024 presidential election.
In a new ad, Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley isn't mincing words.
I'll just say it. Biden's too old.
The 51-year-old former South Carolina governor has gained momentum in early voting states, but still trails 77-year-old former president and primary frontrunner Donald Trump.
It's great to be back here in Nevada.
Though she calls out President Biden by name in the ad, Haley also takes a thinly veiled swing at other older candidates.
We need term limits, mental competency tests.
She gets to talk about the issue without actually being explicit about who she's talking about. This would affect Trump, this would affect Biden, this would affect a lot of the older senators who are increasingly unpopular, a lot of older House members for that matter too.
For President Biden, the age issue looms especially large, with scrutiny placed on moments like this.
You could say even this harder than getting a ticket to the Renaissance tour or Britney's tour. She's down in, it's kind of warm in Brazil right now.
According to a new report by Axios, current and former aides say Biden is extraordinarily energetic for his age, but his repeated insistence that he feels so young can draw eye rolls. Some current and former aides believe Biden doesn't realize how old he can come across. The president also reportedly pushes for more travel and events than his aides think he should. Now, in the past, when asked to respond to voters' concerns about his age, the president said that they should watch him and see how he carries out the job.
Do they care about it? Yes. But do they care about it enough to choose someone else over him? That's something that remains to be seen, particularly on issues that affect their day-to-day lives in a way that the president's age doesn't.
There's no precedent for the choice voters are poised to make in the general election between two men who would either be, again, the oldest or second oldest to take the office. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nashar reporting.
All right, Atra, thank you. Coming up after the break, as city and state officials celebrate a long-term agreement keeping the Orioles in Baltimore tonight, we examine how that agreement translates into your taxpayer dollars. And right after the break, Baltimore City Schools received a record amount of money this year, but ranks near the bottom in performance. Project Baltimore presses school leadership on why results aren't backing up the funding.
We need people to believe that Baltimore can continue to grow and thrive, and the Baltimore Orioles are going to be a core linchpin.
The Orioles are here to stay as Governor Wes Moore announces a deal is done with the Maryland Stadium Authority, keeping the Orioles at Camden Yards for the next 30 years.
I know you're excited about this because you and your family go to the games quite a bit. I need to get out to the games more. The new deal, by the way, comes after months of negotiations and a lot of meetings.
David Williams with the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. He is joining us live tonight to weigh in on this. David, thanks for joining us. The big question is, what does this deal mean for the future of Baltimore City? What does it mean for taxpayers?
Yeah, good afternoon. And I'm excited that the Orioles are staying, but I'm not excited for taxpayers and really the economics of this. And therein lies the problem, is that this is going to cost taxpayers a lot of money. And we really didn't hear about that during the announcement, did we? Is that the Orioles are not paying any rent in this new deal. So it's rent-free. Now, they are paying some of the tax from concessions and from tickets. So there is money that they're going to be paying, but there's no rent. And then there's this big, huge pot of money, $600 million in bond financing for improvements to the stadium. Now, Megan, let's take a step back and look at this. You have an owner that's a billionaire, or I think worth like $2.5 or $3 billion, and he's using taxpayer money to fix his stadium. Now, when all this is said and done, the team is going to be worth more money. So taxpayers are actually paying for him to be worth more money in 5, 10, 15, and 30 years, or whenever he sells it. So that's my problem, is that this is a taxpayer-funded renovation of the stadium and a deal that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, David, you just mentioned the agreement allowing the Orioles to develop around the ballpark. But I want to get back to this point you were just making to Megan, is that the O's are going to be in this home rent-free, but that doesn't mean it's free. Who's paying for that?
So it's when you go to the ballpark and you buy a ticket, part of that's going to go to the state, right? So that's how they're, paying for this. And quite frankly, the economics, it doesn't work out, because we hear that it's going to revitalize downtown, it revitalizes cities. We have not seen that in one city across the country. We always see the promise of that people are going to come into the city. What happens is people shift their spending. So they may go to a baseball game, but when baseball's not on, they're going to the movies, they're going to bars, to restaurants. They're not spending it on baseball. So a lot of new money isn't going to come in. And I'm not just making this up. Economists have studied this for years and decades, and there's been no economic benefit to cities or states with new stadiums.
David, this is kind of part one of a major project in Baltimore City. We heard the governor talking about the revitalization of Harbor Place as well. You mentioned that if you're not going to the ballpark, you might be going to some other areas. Could this still benefit Baltimore City, or is this just too much to tackle at once?
I think it's not really going to benefit Baltimore City in the long run. Listen, everyone's happy right now because the Orioles are staying. They had a great year, and they've been playing really well this past year. So that's the excitement. But after all the dust settles, you have a state that has a structural deficit staring at them in the face. And now they're giving $600 million to a billionaire. I mean, the state is in financial trouble. The city is in financial trouble. They need to focus on what's important, the core activities of the state and of the city. For the city, you fix the education system, you address public safety. That's how you bring people back into the city. You don't give a stadium or a billionaire taxpayer money to do that. You want to create the whole city, not just bits and pieces of it, because now you're looking at Harbor Place, you're looking at Camden Yards. These are just small sections of the city that they're trying to redevelop. The whole city needs to be looked at as a whole.
All right. David Williams says he's glad the O's are staying in town, but he says show taxpayers the long-term value for this deal. And I think that's a fair question, David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have decided to move forward with the legislation as proposed without any amendments.
Now, 2 counties under pressure. Baltimore County Council Chair Julian Jones decides to drop his controversial amendments, which have sparked weeks of debate. The move comes after a Blue Ribbon Commission recommended making the Office of the Inspector General a permanent part of county government.
What these bills do is they move the office to the charter, which just makes it that much more difficult to remove or to make major edits to the office.
Prior to the vote on the proposal, Council Chair Jones releasing a string of amendments, which would have ultimately weakened the power of the Inspector General. Jones, who has been cited 2 times in investigations by the IG's office, says the amendments were a response to residents' concerns. Well, the council ultimately dismissed those amendments and passed a measure that calls for the Inspector General's office to be written into the county charter.
They are going to bring great things for Baltimore County as well as the Office of the Inspector General.
That measure must still be approved by voters next November.
Well, this year, Baltimore City Schools will spend a record amount of money per student, but the question is, what kind of education will those students receive?
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps explains, according to new data, nearly 2/3 of city schools earned the lowest possible performance ratings from the state.
These are the buildings that our young people deserve.
In Northwest Baltimore last week,
I am very pleased.
City leaders gathered to mark a milestone.
We know how important these celebrations are.
A ribbon cutting to open the newly built Cross Country Elementary Middle School, the latest project funded by the 21st Century School Building Program. But as City Schools continues meeting construction goals, is failing to meet academic goals. The Maryland State Department of Education, also last week, released the results of the 2023 school report card. Every year, roughly 1,300 public schools in the state are rated based on performance metrics, such as test scores, attendance, and graduation rates. Each school then receives a star rating from a low of 1 star to a high of 5 stars. Project Baltimore analyzed this year's data and found 65% of Baltimore City's 148 schools earned 1 or 2 stars, the lowest possible rating. That means Baltimore City has by far the highest percentage of 1 and 2 in Baltimore County. At about 27% earned 1 or 2 stars, is 4% in Howard County, and just about 3% in Carroll County. Baltimore City Schools this year has a $1.7 billion budget to educate about 75,000 students. The school system is now spending more than $22,000 per student, which is one of the highest amounts in America when looking at large school systems. Yet despite that amount of spending, nearly 2/3 of all city schools received the lowest possible ratings from the state.
Hi, Chris.
Following the ribbon cutting at Cross Country, we asked City Schools CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises about these results.
What do you say to the tens of thousands of families that have children in those schools?
To those families, what I would say is I am continuing to look at those schools personally. We will be making additional shifts as necessary, and to know that we're not satisfied.
Santelises told FOX45 one of the biggest obstacles to student success is chronic absenteeism, which is defined by the state as a student who misses more than 10% of school, or 19 days, over an entire school year.
That there are many people.
In 2016, when Dr. Santelises took over as CEO, 23% of Baltimore City students were chronically absent. In 2019, that number nearly doubled to 42%. By 2022, 58% of Baltimore City students were chronically absent, the highest level in the state. As we looked deeper into the report card, we can see the 6 lowest performing schools in Maryland are all in Baltimore City. In total, more than 1,800 students attend these schools. At each one, more students are chronically absent than not. At Excel Academy, 98.7% of students are chronically absent. 98.7%.
I think what we're seeing is disconnection between school and youth and families that occurred during the pandemic.
Dr. Santelises said the school district has invested in outreach, trying to find students and get them to school. She told Project Baltimore the district re-engaged about 2,400 students this past year, far more than before the pandemic.
What that says to me is we have to work more closely with our community partners and really, frankly, making school and learning compelling for young people. Yes, it's an issue in Baltimore City, and it's an issue, like I said, across the state and country, but we're working on it.
When the star ratings were released by the state last week, Project Baltimore analyzed the results for the main school systems in the Baltimore region. You can find that story and a link to the data if you would like to see how your child's school performed on our website, foxbaltimore.com. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington. Coming up, a look at recent anti-Israel protests around the country, including right here on Capitol Hill.
And I'm Wyatt Everhart. A cold day with a few flurries around the Baltimore area. Now we're just seeing mainly the winds continue to gust in the 20s. Wind chill factors headed down to the teens and 20s tonight. We'll talk about when things turn just a little bit milder around here. That's coming up.
Israeli forces say they raided one of the last functioning hospitals in northern Gaza and bombarded the south with airstrikes. The deadly strikes killed at least 28 Palestinians. Israeli troops destroyed a wall of the Al-Ali hospital in Gaza City and detained most of its staff. According to the church that operates it, now, it was the same hospital that was the scene of an explosion early in the war that was later determined to be caused by a misfired Palestinian rocket, according to the Associated Press. Here's a live look from Washington, D.C. right now, where protesters gathered on Capitol Hill calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins has the story.
Demonstrators gathering in the Capitol Rotunda Tuesday, calling for an end to the violence in Gaza. They remained calm and respectful, but the demonstration was not authorized. Capitol Police making numerous arrests. A more intense scene playing out the night before in Manhattan. Anti-Israel protesters taking over Grand Central Station Monday evening, calling for an end to the state of Israel, chanting "From the river to the sea," while demanding an intifada. Alec Baldwin caught in the New York chaos, the actor clashing with protesters. These slogans, chanted in New York, have been used historically as calls for violence against Israel and the Jewish people. Left-wing political commentator Bill Maher adding his thoughts.
It's hard to negotiate when the other side's bargaining position is you all die and disappear. I mean, the chant "from the river to the sea." Yeah, let's look at the map. Here's the river, here's the sea. Oh, I see. It means you get all of it, even though it's indisputably also the Jews' ancestral homeland.
Americans' views on Israel remain starkly divided, mostly by age. A Harvard-Harris poll conducted this month reports a majority of young Americans believe Israel should be ended and given to Hamas. Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, Hamas, a designated terrorist group by the U.S. and the European Union. The United States maintains Israel's right to defend itself against terrorism and continues to work for a two-state solution to the conflict. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
That brings us to our national question of the day. Do you believe that Israel should continue fighting in the war until Hamas has been eliminated? To make your voice heard, head to foxbaltimore.com and click on the Pulse tab.
All right, weather-wise, what a cold, blustery day, but a beautiful finish. Visually, weather looking nice out there if you're in a nice warm space looking out the window. 40 right now at BWI, but those west winds and northwesterly winds we've had all day, they really are the story, keeping the wind chill factor ever present. And even the actual air temps now getting close to the freezing mark. Owings Mills, Woodlawn, and into Essex, all points down now below the 40-degree mark. And with this cold northerly flow continuing to come into Maryland tonight, expect those numbers to continue to drop around here. So, yeah, gusts into the mid-230s today. This was not the powerhouse winds of yesterday, where we were gusting into the 50-mile-per-hour range, but those were milder winds. These were much colder northwesterly winds, and you see the results here with wind chill factors now generally down below freezing around Baltimore and much colder than that out into western Maryland. Have a little holiday scene for you. We did have a few flurries in the area today. Those numbers dropping down into the 20s for you first thing tomorrow morning. The wind's relenting, so I actually think it'll feel less cold tomorrow, even in the morning hours. Air temp may be lower, won't have the wind chill. So the big chill comes in, yes, but the wind's diminishing. After that, we stay clear and dry, and then ultimately we turn milder, not in the immediate next few days, but toward Christmas itself. It actually does look a bit milder around here. Flurry action mainly to our north now, still windy and cold. High pressure settling in out of the west. It's a big Canadian high pressure dome. It's going to keep us on the clear and dry side the next several days. In fact, almost not a cloud in the sky. You'll need the sunglasses as well as the heavy coat headed out the door first thing tomorrow. At least you will not need quite as much wind protection, though. Maybe not quite as much lip balm, right, with the winds dying off. Still, a bright afternoon. I think it's going to seem relatively nicer for you. And then as we go beyond that into Tuesday and Wednesday, temperatures kind of struggling their way back into a slightly milder pattern, maybe mid-40s Wednesday afternoon. But then we're going to get a reinforcing shot of some colder air. So it's like briefly milder into Thursday. Then we go colder Friday, Saturday. But then trending milder from Sunday into Monday. So there we go. Christmas Eve and the Christmas Day. Maybe the kids get some nice outdoor toys. They can take those outside probably because it looks relatively mild both afternoons. Clear weather for our Christmas travelers here in the Baltimore area.
All right, Wyatt, thank you. Coming up at 5 o'clock on Fox 45, a back and forth on Capitol Hill after the largest Japanese steelmaker purchases U.S. steel. The lawmaker speaking out over the potential security concerns. A holly jolly ride through Charm City. Fox 45 News has a sneak peek of the Holly Jolly Trolley and the historic sights you'll see. Hey, get ready to get your Holly Jolly on with Kris Kringle approved tour. Be More lifestyle host Mark Clark is riding along with the Holly Jolly trolley with all the holiday stops and festivities.
And we're aboard the Holly Jolly trolley. Kris is the man, a historian, our tour guide. So Kris, we're on the trolley and people, we're comfortable and you give us the information. So how does it go down?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mark. We leave from the Royal Sonesta right here on Light Street, and we cruise all over the city on the Holly Jolly trolley, and we talk about some of these great Baltimore holiday traditions, as well as some Baltimore history sprinkled in as well.
So Kris, you have all the history. Give us a couple nuggets just to wet our whistle.
I mean, there's so much to talk about. We've got so many great stories to tell here in this city, not just holiday related. We're the birthplace of the Star-Spangled Banner, the birthplace of Babe Ruth. Edgar Allan Poe became a professional writer here. We've been lighting up the Washington Monument in Mount Vernon, the first Washington monument in American history, by the way, and we've been lighting it up for more than 40 years now, and of course the Miracle on 34th Street for more than 70 years now. They've been lighting up that block of 34th Street, and you can see it up close and personal on the Holly Jolly trolley.
Now as we wrap up, man, you gave me a good one, so Light Street.
Yes.
Tell us about that Light Street story.
Well, big part of the reason why we are on Light Street is because Baltimore was one of the first cities in the country to install gas-powered street lamps along the streets, along all of our streets here. So we've always been at the forefront of technology and innovation, and our light shines to this day. And you can see some of those lights on the Holly Jolly Trolley Tour.
The Holly Jolly Trolley Tour with Kris. You got to check it out, guys. It's amazing. Perfect time. Friends are in town, families in town. This will be a great activity to get into.
All right, thank you both. Well, coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock tonight, the debate over the city council's stance on Israel continues. The new emails shedding a light on how Baltimore residents feel about the back and forth. And Fox 45 continues our investigation into the Safe Streets program, the probe in the works that could reveal how the program is spending your tax dollars. Than I did. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock tonight, a student and teacher are stabbed at a city high school. Alexa Ashwell is live with the very latest.
A town hall discussion addressing juvenile crime gets heated as prosecutors say the Department of Juvenile Services isn't doing enough. The fiery exchange between the department's leader and a city prosecutor.
And later, Baltimore residents speak out following 2 failed city council resolutions regarding the war in Israel. The emails sent by constituents demanding answers.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
Fox 45 News is following breaking news out of Carver Votech. Right now, where we understand a student and teacher were stabbed. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Megan Gillen. Let's go straight to Fox 45's Alexa Ashwell. She is live at Carver, joining us with the latest details. Alexa, what are you learning now?
Yes, Kai, Megan, district leaders confirm one student was taken into custody. 2 people were injured. Another student and a teacher, we're told, both suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Carver Vocational has since dismissed for the day. This is what we know. When we first arrived here to Carver Vocational High School, there was a heavy police presence. An ambulance was leaving the scene. We're told that teacher was taken to the hospital. And many parents were arriving in fear, wondering what had happened. They had been told about a stabbing, and they were here to pick up their child. The district says around 1 this afternoon there was a fight between students in which one student pulled out what they're calling a sharp object. 2 people suffered those cuts, the student and another teacher. Officials say they were attempting to intervene. The teacher, again, taken to a local hospital, both victims suffering non-life-threatening injuries. Parents tell us they're frustrated with the violence here at Carver. Take a listen.
You got kids coming to school with weapons, knives, guns. Why is that necessary?
When I went here, it was shootings. We had school lockdowns almost every day. I don't know what they're going to do to fix it. I don't know if it's anything they can do to fix it.
Now, the district says the school was placed on lockdown before dismissal, but many parents tell us they were not properly notified. I did question the district on this. Take a listen. Did the district notify parents?
So the school was on lockdown and notifications went out to the impacted students. This incident happened fairly closely to when schools released, so parents were on their way.
We also heard parents express their frustration about the overall violence. You may recall, Kai, Megan, back in October, 3 teens were shot outside of this school just weeks ago. Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates announced indictments against one of those teens and his parents. As for this case, again, one student, we're told, taken into custody. Right now, it's unclear what, if any, charges they are facing. Reporting live, Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Alexa. Today's stabbing comes as juvenile crime just continues to dominate policy discussion all around Maryland, especially with just weeks before lawmakers begin the next legislative session.
And Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost joins us live right now to break down the latest debate over data and how the Department of Juvenile Services handles certain cases. Mackenzie?
The back and forth between the leader of the Department of Juvenile Services and a prosecutor was really a big takeaway from last night's town hall about juvenile crime in Baltimore City. And the debate continues over what needs to happen next. But really, the one thing is clear is that 2 key players in this conversation are not on the same page.
With that, I want to hand it over.
From the beginning of a juvenile crime town hall in Baltimore City, the frustrations on full display.
Secretary Schiraldi, I would really love to see your data.
Absolutely.
Because, and this is from 22.
Yeah, and you're going to see the next one in less than a month. I'd like to see some data from you, though. I'm not really hearing too much data from your office.
A fiery exchange between DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi and the Deputy Division Chief for Juveniles in the City State's Attorney's Office, Kate Rosenblatt, highlighting the lack of clear policy on what to do with kids at intake, especially when guns are involved. A woman in the audience telling Schiraldi her teenager was robbed at gunpoint in September in the middle of the afternoon.
Gun cases should come to us when they do. If the police bring a gun case to us, which they can't divert, so they're bringing them to us, we detain them till they see the judge the next day, and the judge makes his or her own decision.
The woman says the suspect was not detained, adding she supports programs and services for young people and their families, but right now, she says the current system is not working.
I'm not opposed to funding for that. I just know that I also know kids that are laughing at the cops.
when they arrest them.
The state's attorney's office handing out flyers detailing juvenile crime data. In 2023, 625 juvenile cases charged by Baltimore City's town prosecutor's office, including 279 stolen car cases, 142 handgun-related cases, 126 robbery-related cases, but that's not all.
It was noted that there's 189 cases, I guess, waiting to be referred to the district attorney's office, state's attorney's office.
Secretary Schiraldi appeared blindsided by that data point.
There are 189 cases we know are out there and that may be forwarded to our office at some time.
We just heard about 189 cases which were important enough to put on that piece of paper, but which have never come to my attention from the state's attorney's office. So is this just important to say here in front of cameras? Or if we want it to be resolved, is it something that should have been brought to me?
And after the meeting, Secretary Schiraldi, we tried catching up with him to talk about the data debate. Secretary Schiraldi, why won't you answer questions? But the secretary and his staffer scurrying out the side door, not taking our questions. Meanwhile, Senate President Bill Ferguson addressing our questions.
I'm frustrated.
Saying DJS isn't working, especially when you have two agencies on completely different pages about the data and what's happening with juvenile offenders. Where's the reality in this conversation?
It's the right question. It's the question I've been asking for the last year. The challenge is probably everyone's a little bit right and everyone's a little bit wrong. It is absolutely my commitment that people will be around the table to figure this out. We can't continue like this.
The solution remains elusive, with lawmakers pledging to craft policy to address concerns. It's not clear what it will look like come January. Now, Senator Ferguson also says he wants to make sure that DJS is following the appropriate policies and procedures, but that won't come with future legislation. Instead, he says that's something that could be addressed using the budget authority. We're live in the newsroom. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Schiraldi's comments last night come as he is facing some backlash over his views on crime and consequences. Schiraldi says people shouldn't be placed in the adult prison system until they turn 25, since their brains are not fully developed. But while Governor Wes Moore calls Schiraldi a reformer, others say his views make Maryland less safe.
You're basically saying up until the age of 25, which is what he wants to do, you get a free ride.
Unfortunately, legislators, lawmakers, have decided that it's better to support the lawbreakers rather than those who are enforcing the law.
Fox 45 News spoke with frustrated residents at last night's town hall who say they're tired of the lack of action from the Department of Juvenile Services and Schiraldi's performance.
I think Schiraldi really came out short. He was very indirect, and in some ways, he was very self-serving tonight, and really this is about public safety. It's not about him personally, and I think there's a lot more accountability he needs to answer to. I think Schiraldi's got a lot of gaps in what his data presents.
When it comes to DJS, what do you think is going on with the secretary, and do you think that he understands the problem that is going on?
No, he doesn't, and he doesn't have to understand because it doesn't affect him directly. It's a paycheck to him. If you lived in a neighborhood that these things constantly affected you day in and day out, you'd want change and you'd want it now.
When it comes to hearing from DJS specifically, what do you want to hear from the secretary about what's going on?
His resignation. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but I just don't think he gets it.
Well, that brings us to our question of the day. Do you think that Governor Moore needs to replace Vincent Schiraldi? So far, looking at the results coming in, 97% of those who have responded say yes. You can make your voice heard right now by going to foxbaltimore.com/vote.
If you feel your juvenile crime concerns aren't being heard, you can reach out to lawmakers. House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson are two of the most powerful voices in Annapolis. Their phone numbers and email addresses are on your screen.
And Fox 45 News is hosting our own town hall on public safety, and we are inviting you to join us. City Councilman Eric Costello and mayoral candidate Sheila Dixon will be on our panel. This is taking place Wednesday, that is tomorrow, December 20th at 7 p.m. at Leadenhall Baptist Church.
Fallout continues following a judge's controversial decision to house an adult offender in a juvenile facility.
As we reported yesterday, an 18-year-old facing nearly 60 counts of attempted murder and gun charges for his involvement in the Brooklyn Homes mass shooting may no longer be held in an adult facility.
Now, despite his age and the seriousness of the crimes, a new ruling will place Tristan Jackson back under DJS supervision. But as Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor reports, that could lead to his release. Rebecca?
Yeah, Megan and Kai, by putting Tristan Jackson back under DJS supervision, that then gives DJS the authority to decide where or if Jackson will be detained. As word spreads of Judge Charles Bloomquist's decision to house an adult offender in a juvenile facility.
Why in the world would he put him into a juvenile detention facility?
Debate over the decision, the talk of Baltimore's talk radio.
He's basically made adult decisions. He should be treated like an adult.
And amongst local attorneys sharing their shock.
It is unheard of. It is highly unusual for something like this to occur.
It would be extremely rare, no doubt.
At 18 years old, Tristan Jackson is legally an adult accused of 57 counts of attempted murder and weapons charges in connection to the Brooklyn Homes mass shooting. Police claiming Jackson was caught on CCTV cameras spraying 5 rounds in the direction of 7 unknown individuals who were fleeing. Following his August arrest, a judge deeming Jackson a danger to the community, holding him without bond in an adult facility. Last Friday, Judge Bloomquist approving a motion to move Jackson to a juvenile facility.
Legally speaking, minors are minors and adults are adults. It just doesn't seem to follow the logical course of where most cases track.
Legal experts also questioning if the transfer could allow Jackson to walk free. Due to capacity constraints, there are often long wait times for open beds inside DJS detention centers. Due to PREA regulations, which prevent adults from being housed with juveniles, there's a chance that at 6'5", 210 pounds, Jackson could be released from custody and instead placed on a DJS ankle monitor while he awaits his adult trial.
There is a very realistic possibility that the Department of Juvenile Services is not going to be able to place Mr. Jackson in a facility that will ensure the safety of the other children that are housed in the very same facility.
When they get past that, 17 and 6 month sort of window, they're sort of moving them and looking for other placements for them, putting them on electronic monitoring.
This is police claim Jackson's DJS ankle monitor from a prior gun offense is what they used to track Jackson to the scene of the Brooklyn Homes shooting.
He's arguably a very dangerous person.
Concerns echoed in a statement from the city state's attorney's office, writing in part, quote, as it stands, DJS does not consider public safety when determining whether a youth should be detained, and we fear the possibility that DJS will allow him to be released into the community, even though a judge has already found him to be a threat to the community. Fox 45 sending questions to DJS yesterday and again today, asking, will Jackson remain detained until his trial? And would housing an adult in a juvenile detention center be a violation of PREA? As of news time tonight, no response. Now, an administrative judge still needs to approve the DJS transfer. Today, I sent questions to the Maryland judiciary asking when or if that will happen, but they declined to comment. Reporting live in the control room, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
All right, Rebecca, thank you. Fox 45 News sent questions to all members of the General Assembly asking, should Tristan Jackson be transferred to a juvenile facility or kept in an adult facility? Delegate Charles Otto, the only member to respond so far. In a statement, take a look. He says, quote, Tristan Jackson should not be transferred to a juvenile facility, as his crimes are not of a juvenile nature, nor is his age in the range to be in a juvenile facility. I hope to see the law treat him as an adult and give justice to those who were victimized by him.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, a back and forth on Capitol Hill after the largest Japanese steelmaker purchases an icon, U.S. Steel. The lawmaker speaking out over the potential security concerns.
And next, a crime walk in Southeast Baltimore, shining a light on the juvenile crime crisis. The top prosecutor joining in tonight.
All right, weather-wise today, we did have clear skies, but also gusty winds and some flurries out there, to say the least. We will continue to look at a dry scenario tonight, but cold and windy, and those winds continuing to blast in at around 25 miles an hour. More on when the mild trend picks back up. That's straight ahead.
Baltimore City State's Attorney Ivan Bates continues his tough talk on juvenile crime and holding young offenders accountable. Bates is joining some community leaders today in a crime walk in Southeast Baltimore, where residents say they are concerned about, among other things, open-air drug dealing and the young people allegedly involved in this. Fox 45's Keith Daniels joining us live with more on how Bates is responding. Keith.
Well, Megan, we're live on Dundalk Avenue near O'Donnell Street, where the group with Bates met here before taking that walk around the neighborhood. Neighbors pointing out, or residents rather, pointing out what they're calling hot spots for crime, from prostitution, they say, to open-air drug dealing, in some cases involving juvenile offenders. Now, Bates and other top prosecutors in Maryland see the state's juvenile justice laws as a driving force around juvenile crime, leaving their hands tied in some cases, they say. Now, Bates and the others are taking those concerns to Annapolis. They want lawmakers, among other things, to increase probation for kids with guns, and they're asking DJS to notify the court when a young person violates home monitoring. Now, they're also asking lawmakers to clarify, or rather classify, groups who recruit children to steal cars from them as organized crime units.
I think one of the things you see criminal organizations able to use juveniles and to say, hey, nothing's going to happen to you in the first place, so we're going to direct you to do that type of behavior.
Now, of course, we'll hear more from Bates at this event and more on who came with him to address these residents' concerns. That's coming up tonight at 10. For now, live in Southeast Baltimore, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
One thing I always love about Keith, he is dressed for the weather, and that's what we need out there tonight, my friends. We're talking about still brisk, windy conditions, and the temperatures just plummeting here over the last 60 to 90 minutes, dropping below the 40s now in Aberdeen, down to 30s in Easton as well as Westminster, mid-30s there, and that does not even begin to factor in the wind chill factor. Now, these are just the actual air temps, coldest weather we've seen in some time, and that's going to continue into the evening. Now, the winds are beginning to relent, thank goodness. 2 full days of the winds just blasting out of the west and then northwest today. Now we're seeing those winds let up. I mean, peak gusts this afternoon were still in the mid-30s. I mean, yesterday we gusted to 50. Still, this was a very windy day and much colder air coming in as that wind rotated out of the north. So wind chill factor, real feels already down in the low 30s, even 20s in Gaithersburg. Feels like 10 degrees now out toward Deep Creek Lake at Oakland. So cold stuff, winter-like for sure. Tonight, we'll look for those 20s to hit the map as we go into the morning. But as the winds let up, it might actually seem a little milder. Even though we'll be technically colder tomorrow, I think it'll feel milder even first thing in the morning. And it's a clear, dry trend overall. Milder weather, not until, ironically, in some ways, Christmas. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, I think we'll finally break out of the winter pattern, but it's a wintry pattern now. Cold, windy, flurries. We had at times, certainly in western Maryland, but even around Baltimore midday today, a few flakes did fly. No accumulation, obviously, but it was cold and windy and a little instability, snow flurry action at times. The numbers continue to run colder tonight, down into the upper 20s. As we work into your basically Wednesday afternoon, struggling to get out of the 40s, we'll see a little milder scenario Thursday. That's a pretty nice day at 50. Then colder air arrives for Friday into Saturday. So it's kind of back and forth with the cold shots, if you will. Still bright and dry conditions. And see how things turn milder here from Christmas Eve Sunday into Christmas Day on Monday. Next chance for real rain around here actually holds off until we get into Tuesday. So yeah. Right now, at least around the Baltimore, D.C. region, we're talking about clear Christmas travel weather. That's the good news.
All right, we like that. Wyatt, thank you. Still ahead, the debate over the city council's stance on Israel continues. The new emails shedding light on how Baltimore residents feel about the back and forth.
Yet another iconic American brand sold to a foreign country. I'm Christine Frizzell with a look at this growing trend.
Tonight, shockwaves following the sale of one of the largest and most iconic American companies to a foreign country. U.S. national correspondent Christine Frizzell reporting it's bringing up big questions about what this is going to mean for our economy and our national security.
It's part of its name and its deep-rooted history.
Since 1901, our products and the people who made them have been embedded in American life.
So the $14 billion sale of U.S. Steel, started by J.P. Morgan and Andrew Carnegie, among others, to the Japanese company Nippon Steel, was met with swift backlash.
It's absolutely outrageous that they have sold themselves to a foreign nation and a company. Can't do that. Steel is always about security.
While it will keep its headquarters in Pittsburgh, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and Missouri's Josh Hawley writing a letter to the Treasury Department, warning of dire implications for the industrial base of the United States, adding the transaction was not made with U.S. national security in mind.
See you again.
While Japan is one of the United States' closest allies, this sale is just the latest on a growing list of iconic American brands being bought by a foreign entity. Even one of the big three U.S. automakers, Chrysler, is now owned by Stellantis, a company based in the Netherlands. Anheuser-Busch was sold to the Belgian company InBev, and Smithfield Pork, started in Virginia in the 1930s, is now owned by China, which also owns nearly 350,000 acres of U.S. farmland, less than 1% of foreign-held land, but still very concerning for many.
There are people who are tied to the Communist Party of China, who is an adversary of ours, actually purchasing property. It could be a coincidence that some of the properties they've purchased are really close to some of our military installations, but we want to make sure that we're not even in the position where there's a real risk.
China's scooping up of land and businesses and its increased competition on electric cars has brought up memories for some of the political and economic tensions the United States had with Japan in the 1980s. Tensions expected to stick around for the foreseeable future. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
All right, Christine, thank you. Fox 45 News continues our investigation into the Safe Streets program, the probe in the works that could reveal how the program is spending your tax dollars.
I'm Janae Bowens in Washington with a look at how Christians in Gaza are being impacted by the Israel-Hamas war.
believe that the commission would like to request that you all take a look at MONSE, specifically the administration of the Safe Streets program.
After months of questions from Fox 45 News about an audit of the city agency overseeing Safe Streets, the probe is now one step closer.
Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost joins us live right now with the latest push for transparency. Mackenzie?
Yeah, Kai and Megan, there is a commission that oversees when city agencies are audited. They can also perform single audits if requested. And after we questioned this commission for months now about moving forward with an audit of MONSE, it appears that plan got a green light.
I'm going to go over the Group B proposed audit plan for 2024.
The Biennial Audit Commission meeting Monday for an update on this year's reviews and what's coming next.
Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. It was presented to us from a couple different parties to include them in the 2024 audit plan.
Councilman Isaac Gitzy-Schleifer says there needs to be a better understanding of how the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, or MONSE, actually implements Safe Streets, especially when there have been unanswered questions about protocols for the violence interrupters.
There's been a lot of questions raised in the past, and there's really a lot of inconsistencies.
This year, two nonprofits took the lead of managing the 10 Safe Street sites, LifeBridge Health and Catholic Charities. Councilman Schleifer argues no one seems to be on the same page about responsibilities and policies.
We saw also during previous hearings where questions were asked of those entities, they would defer to MONSE.
Fox 45 News has been investigating Safe Streets for more than 2 years. This year, we uncovered several spending questions within the program, like when Safe Streets spend thousands of dollars on training trips to Los Angeles or hundreds of dollars on sneakers. The fallout of the Brooklyn Day mass shooting highlighted the need for a better understanding of the policies. Safe Streets workers were at the block party mediating conflicts before the chaos unfolded, but didn't tell the police about the event. Fox 45 News previously asking the 7 members of the Audit Commission if they supported a probe of MONSE. Several members said yes. Now the issue back in front of them.
We don't have enough information to even know that there's consistent policies across the board.
My suggestion on this particular case is to follow the money.
But the concern is that the metrics aren't clear enough for the auditor to move forward right away. Instead, the commission moving forward with a plan.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
To get a draft scope for the probe together by late January.
Motion carries 7-0.
Before the audit actually happens sometime in 2024. Now, the proposal for that potential audit of MONSE is due back to the Audit Commission at the next meeting on January 23rd. The commission also moving forward with similar plans to take a look at how the city is spending those federal ARPA dollars. That was at the request of City Council President Nick Mosby, who wants to make sure that your tax dollars aren't being wasted. We're live in the newsroom. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. And Fox 45 News will continue to press for answers surrounding the Safe Streets program and follow this audit process closely. We'll keep you updated every step of the way. By the way, you can find all of our reporting on our website, foxbaltimore.com.
I have decided to move forward with the legislation as proposed without any amendments.
Now to counties under pressure. Baltimore County Council Chair Julian Jones decides to drop his controversial amendments, which have sparked weeks of debate. The move comes after a Blue Ribbon Commission recommended making the Office of the Inspector General a permanent part of the county government.
What these bills do is they move the office to the charter, which just makes it that much more difficult to remove or to make major edits to the office.
Prior to the vote on the proposal, Council Chair Jones releasing a string of amendments, which would have ultimately weakened the power of the Inspector General. Jones, who has been cited 2 times in investigations by the IG's office, says the amendments were a response to residents' concerns. Well, the council ultimately dismissed those amendments and passed a measure that calls for the Inspector General's office to be written into the county charter.
They are going to bring great things for Baltimore County as well as the Office of the Inspector General.
Now, something to keep in mind, that measure must still be approved by voters next November.
The controversy surrounding the Baltimore City Council's stance on the war in Israel continues. Earlier this month, 2 resolutions were introduced, one condemning the initial October 7th attack, the other condemning anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Both failed. Well, now, new emails are shedding light on how Baltimore residents feel about the council's back and forth on condemning anti-Semitism. Fox 45 News is looking at the fallout surrounding the war in Israel between Israel and Hamas and across the world in Gaza.
That's right. We have team coverage for you tonight. National correspondent Janae Bowens. She's going to be joining us later, taking a closer look at the plight of Gaza's Christian minority. But we begin now with Fox 45's Jeff Abel and those emails to City Council. Jeff.
You know, it appears those 4 city council members who abstained from voting on that anti-Hamas legislation have now been flooded with emails themselves condemning them for their actions. As you know, the resolution which denounced anti-Semitism and condemned the Hamas attack on Israel failed to pass after 4 council members refused to vote on the measure. Now, angry emails are pouring into City Hall, taking aim at the 4 city council members who abstained. Well, we obtained copies of those emails, and many of them take a very similar tone. To Councilman Christopher Burnett, one constituent wrote, "Shame on you. How can you support terrorism? Hamas committed atrocities and will continue to do so. Shame on you." To Councilman Odette Ramos, "You should be ashamed of yourself. You are treating Jewish people differently than any other minority who is being attacked for their race, culture, religion. Somehow, in the left's view, Jews don't count." And to Councilman Ryan Dorsey, "Why don't you ride your bike to Israel and then see how you feel about terrorism? Again, you never disappoint." Well, after the measure failed, its sponsor, Councilman Yitzi Schleifer, also addressed his colleagues.
This is the double standard that we have grown to live with our entire life. And, you know, it sends the message that hate is only okay if it's being perpetuated against Jews. Murder is only okay if you're murdering Jews. And that sends a horrible message to the people of Baltimore.
Among those emailing council members were judges, rabbis, and fellow state lawmakers. We'll have a lot more about what they had to say tonight on the news at 10. For now, we're live. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
The back and forth surrounding those resolutions follows controversial statements across the state in response to the war. The director of the Council of American Islamic Relations, Zainab Chowdhury, was reinstated to the Hate Crime Commission after a series of social media posts, including one comparing Israeli supporters to Nazis. Attorney General Anthony Brown said his office never had the power to suspend her, but he is working on getting that approval from the governor and General Assembly. A nonprofit CASA of Maryland is facing some backlash over its executive director's comments on the war, expressing his steadfast support for Palestine's relentless fight for freedom. CASA apologized, saying the group was trying to shine a spotlight on the innocent Israeli and Palestinian families caught in the conflict, but they apologized for causing pain and confusion. At the University of Maryland, the words Holocaust 2.0 were written on a sidewalk during a pro-Palestine rally. The group organizing that rally condemned those words.
Turning now to the latest coming out of the war in the Middle East. The UN Security Council is expected to vote on a new ceasefire motion today after an earlier attempt was vetoed by the U.S. The resolution calls for a, quote, suspension of hostilities in Gaza to allow for humanitarian aid to be delivered there. This comes as new details are being revealed about the conditions inside one Gaza Catholic church, where conditions are allegedly deteriorating. Hundreds of people are reported to be sheltering inside, among them family members of one British member of parliament who says her family is, quote, beyond desperate and terrified.
They are quite literally down to their last can of corn. I've run out of words. It's beyond desperate. They've been told by the IDF that they need to evacuate. It's unclear why. These are Christians seeking sanctuary in a church the week before Christmas, having been there for more than 60 days.
This story, just one example of many Christians and Catholics getting caught up in that crossfire of the war. National correspondent Janae Bowens has more.
Every day, Fifi Saba wonders if her family members in Gaza are alive as the fighting between Israel and Hamas continues.
I wait for 24 hours and sometimes 72 hours to get a text message just literally saying we're alive.
She didn't want to share any pictures of them because she feared retribution.
We have to come up with new words for what's happening in Gaza, really, because none of the words in English that I know can describe how I feel.
Her loved ones are taking refuge inside the Holy Family Parish. The IDF confirms an operation near another church in the area, but denies having anything to do with the Latin Patriarch Cuts of Jerusalem's account that 2 women died and 7 more people were injured. The IDF says protecting sensitive sites is a priority and is currently reviewing what happened. Still, the concern exists for Christians in Gaza.
Churches, schools, hospitals, bakeries, libraries. So, no place is safe in Gaza.
All of this at a time when the White House is pressing for the war to be scaled back to protect civilians.
It is in the interest of both Israelis and Palestinians to move forward toward 2 states, living side by side in mutual security.
Fifi is just hoping her loved ones make it through the night.
It's the bare minimum, and it's a little too late to ask for it, but I demand a ceasefire.
Christians are a minority in Gaza, with around 1,000 or so living there, so they're concerned about what could happen next. In Washington, I'm Janae Bowens.
Former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, the first woman to serve on the High Court, was laid to rest today at the Washington National Cathedral. O'Connor died earlier this month at the age of 93. She was the first nominated to the Supreme Court by then President Ronald Reagan in 1981, serving for 24 years before she retired in 2006. During her tenure, she was best known for being a crucial swing vote on decisive cases, notably in 1991 with Roe v. Wade. Today, the late justice was eulogized by President Biden and Chief Justice John Roberts. Biden called O'Connor a true American pioneer.
Sandra Day O'Connor, the daughter of the American West, was a pioneer in her own right, breaking down the barriers in the legal and political worlds and the nation's consciousness. To her, the Supreme Court was bedrock, the bedrock of America.
O'Connor's family is asking for donations to be made to iCivics, the group that she founded to promote civics education. Well, a date has been set for Hunter Biden's federal tax case. When it will be, as we take a closer look at the charges he's facing. And don't let Grinches steal your holiday cheer or packages. An expert weighs in on how to keep your packages safe.
And weather-wise, a cloudy, cold day across Maryland. No question, a few flakes flew at times. Now the wind's beginning to diminish out there, but still breezy. To say the least, we got some gusts up over 20 miles per hour still at this hour, and air temps dropping sharply. We'll talk about how long the big chill lasts coming up.